now witness the firepower of this fully armed and operational battle station.
Testicles.
Hey everybody, welcome to the show. I am Jeff Waldorf. Welcome to Logically Left. And man, it's Friday. We made it. We made it more or less through the week. Okay, so but not unscathed. Okay, what started out was it was a pretty good week. Okay, at the beginning, Tuesday night, of course, Wednesday, Mamdani, but not good today. Not a good end of the day because it is the end of the Supreme Court term, and they just handed down a whole bunch of really disastrous rulings. So we have, of course, that. I'm going to talk about the birthright citizenship one because that is major. But of course, they also talked about allowing states to ban LGBTQ. Well, not ban LGBTQ books, but to allow students to opt out in the school, in any classroom that has LGBTQ plus books. So I mean that is one of the new disaster rulings, of course. More of the Christo-fascism that we're going through as a country that the right wing is pushing on us. Yeah, all of that, really, really disastrous stuff. The birthright citizenship one, though, is once again, it's quite major. Then, I'm going to talk about the establishment. Their reaction to Mamdani is very, very interesting, too. Because, on the one hand, they're like, oh, my God, he beat Cuomo. Oh, crap. It's going to be terrible socialism. How could we stop this? And then, on the other hand, it's like, well, he did win a primary, and so how do we do that? How do we win primaries now without using his policy? That is the internal debate the so-called moderates in the Democratic Party are having. I'm going to talk about that later on today as well. Bizarre conversations going on there. And then, of course, we have a Canadian that died as a result of, well, I wouldn't say as a result of, but he did die in ICE custody. I'm going to talk about that. And then I'm going to talk about the conditions inside some of these ICE detention centers, which are not good. And then, of course, I also do want to talk about, it appears that I was wrong, sort of. Big Balls is back. Somehow Big Balls has returned. Uh-oh.
Testicles.
Oh, here we go. So we're going to get into all of that and more on today's show. So please like and share the stream if you haven't already. And let's... by the way, you can also support the show by becoming a member. Becoming a patron, patreon.com/Jeff Waldorf, as well as, again, hitting the join button below, just like Jaria1286, who is a supporter on our YouTube channel, and David Webb. So thank you to both of you for signing up and upgrading your memberships over on YouTube and helping to support independent progressive media. All right, with that said, let's do it. We're going to jump into an immigration-related story. Okay. The Canadian government is demanding answers into the death of one of their citizens that was being held in ICE detention. Johnny Noviello, pictured here, 49 years old, young guy. He was found unresponsive Monday afternoon in Miami's Bureau of Prisons Federal Detention Center. In a press release, ICE staff had said that medical staff had responded immediately and began administering life-saving measures, CPR, and using the paddles and defibrillator, all that stuff. But Unfortunately, Noviello was pronounced dead within an hour. Of what, you ask? We don't know. There is no details about what he actually died of. The cause of death is currently unknown. So, yeah, that's really important. Now, the Canadian government is like, what do you mean one of our citizens died? Okay. And by the way, this was a Canadian citizen that was legally allowed to be in the United States. And so what was he doing in ICE detention? Well, that has a lot to do with what Donald Trump has been doing to immigrants who happen to commit crimes. Now, the Canadian government was notified of Noviello's death on Thursday. The country's Minister of Foreign Affairs, Anita Anand, said in a statement, Canadian consular officials are urgently seeking more information from U.S. officials. Adding that further details will not be provided to respect the family's privacy. So we're not going to know what happened, but still, Canada's like, we need some answers. What killed him? Now, why was Noviello in ICE detention to begin with? Well, he had been arrested by ICE at a probation office on May 15th. And was actually issued a notice to appear for removal proceedings. They were going to deport the guy. Oh, that's really strange. Again, he was a permanent resident of the United States since October of 1991. He was here on a legal visa, okay? Came here in 1989 on a legal visa and was allowed to be here. Well, I mentioned that he had committed a crime. In 2023, he was convicted of drug trafficking and racketeering in Volusia County, Florida. So, very serious crimes, right? Now, he was sentenced, though, for those crimes to just 12 months, a year in prison. Okay, all right. So, now, since Trump got into office, okay, he has been cracking down. ICE, he has been directing ICE to get rid of all the criminal, illegal immigrants, right? And so now, Noviello, he's not illegal, but he did commit a crime. And so, of course, ICE targeted him and said, well, we're going to deport you then. Even though he was already in prison, he was in custody, all that stuff. Okay. No, not even. No, I'm sorry. He was already out. He was going to his probation hearing. Okay. And so didn't matter. His past conviction, ICE targeted him for that and said, no, we're going to deport you now because you're a dangerous criminal illegal or something. What? Hold on. That's insane. Okay. He already served his time. What's the deal here? Well, again, this is what ICE is doing. Remember, they want to deport about 3,000 people a day. That is their target. So I guess for them, it already makes sense to, you already have him in the system. You know where he is. He's checking in on his, probation, all that stuff. So I guess it makes sense for ICE, if you really want to pump up them numbers, to do stuff like this, to go after people like that. Okay. So, I mean, there it is. Now, so he gets picked up by ICE, goes to this detention center, and is about to be deported. Okay, but then he dies. Now, I'm not saying that ICE killed him, okay, but I can speculate that being in ICE detention in Florida during a heat wave could have had something to do with it. Perhaps. Perhaps not. I don't know. Now, in a press release, ICE claimed that he was given comprehensive medical care, okay, and that all people who are detained by ICE are given this medical care at the moment individuals arrive and throughout the entirety of their stay. Quote, all people in ICE receive medical, dental, and mental health intake screening within 12 hours of arriving at each detention facility, a full health assessment within 14 days of entering ICE custody, or arrival at a facility, access to medical appointments, and 24-hour emergency care. At no time during detention is a detained illegal alien denied emergent care. Okay. If that's the case, how come people keep dying? I mean, that is the question. According to ICE records, at least 7 other individuals, up to 9, have died in custody since January 20th. And despite what ICE is saying about, oh, no, we treat everyone well. Look, they've got health care and all this wonderful care. They got everything. I'm going to take the, word of people who are not ICE over ICE. I'm just saying. And speaking of them, there are people who either were there themselves or had family members in ICE detention that have exposed some really, really horrific conditions. Maria, for example, who spoke to NPR and requested that they do not use her last name for fear of retaliation on her brother, who is incarcerated at the Chrome Detention Center in Miami. He'd been there for over 2 months now. She told NPR, this was from June 6th, that he had sent her text messages saying that he had been suffering with a fever and a serious eye infection for about 2 weeks. What happened? I thought they get the best medical care. It turns out they don't. In fact, she says that he had told her that he was denied medication to treat those issues. Oh, not good. In fact, she said there are a lot of sick people there, and they aren't getting medical attention. They are sleeping on the floor, and sometimes don't get meals. They don't eat. So understand that the conditions in that center, at least, are really bad. And you wonder why people keep dying in detention. Not a stretch here. In fact, more than a dozen detainees, family members, and lawyers had described similar issues as Maria, including detainees underfed and in ill health. Chrome, which is run by ICE, had been dogged for years by allegations of inhumane conditions and had even been investigated by the Department of Justice in 2000 on accusations of sexual abuse of detainees. Yeah. In fact, at the time, this year alone, there had been 2 deaths at the facility, according to NPR, a Ukrainian immigrant, Maxim Chernayak, and Genry Ruiz Guillan of Honduras. In fact, Miami-based lawyer Jeff Patello said, quote, I had a client who was at Chrome. He said his client had told him that he ended up sleeping on the floor for a week or 2, and that for food, they were only given a cup of rice and a glass of water for the entire day. Quote, it was very concerning. So yeah, underfed, overcrowded, sickness everywhere, denial of medication. You know, I don't know, it sounds like one of those Soviet gulags that we had been warned about by right-wingers, saying, Obama, he's going to send people to the gulags. Obama. And the left, they're going to throw in everybody, they're throwing the conservatives and everything. No, it turns out they're the ones who are doing it. DeSantis and Donald Trump and ICE are throwing people into these horrific detention centers. ICE, Tom Homan, Kristi Noem, when she's not out there killing puppies. They're overseeing these horrific conditions. And they want to build more. They want to build more of these and stuff more people into them. One person, Jay, told NPR last month that, quote, they're serving rotten food. People are getting sick. My spouse is not eating. Now, this was at the Glades County Detention Center in Moorhaven, Florida. So notice that a lot of these are in Florida, but there are many detention centers across the country now. And again, Trump wants to build more. Now, Satara Gandhari, advocacy director at the nonprofit advocacy group Detention Watch Network, added, "We have seen rapid deterioration over the last few months. We're hearing reports that there isn't enough food." She says she's increasingly been hearing accounts from people in detention going hungry. "I've heard people use the word starving." Starving. And again, you wonder why people are dying in detention, like this man. These are the conditions that people are being held in right now. I mean, it's inhumane, but guess what? It's inhumane on purpose. They don't want to treat immigrants as human beings. They don't. They don't. And by the way, people, unfortunately, the public at large will give a collective shrug about the people who are in these detention centers because some of them might have a criminal past, like this guy did. That's it. Oh, he's a criminal alien. Well, okay, well then we can starve them, and we can put them in these horrible conditions in these gulags before sending them back to whatever country they come from. In this case, Canada. But in many cases, the global South or Central America. And so that's what's going on here. But look, they're using the fact that some people have committed crimes in order to dehumanize all of them. Okay? And again, most of the people that have been picked up and even deported or even sent to other countries like South Sudan or sent to places like El Salvador's CCOT prison have no criminal records. They're not criminals at all. And it doesn't make sending, by the way, people who do have criminal records to those places good. No, I don't agree with that either. But it shows you that the majority of the people being subjected to these conditions are not dangerous, are not violent, are not murderers, are not rapists, are not anyone who commits these crimes. But here's the thing, though. Okay, these people are working at Home Depot. Okay, these people are trying to work to support their families. That's what they're doing. But understand, though, that overall, this is not about going after criminals. It never was. If that were the case, if that were really the case, then why is President Trump quietly, the Trump administration, quietly dropping charges against the leaders of MS-13? Remember all the freak out, oh my God, MS-13, terrorist organization. I'm not saying they're good either, but that's the Trump administration saying, well, they're dangerous. Oh, criminals are coming after American citizens. We got to put stop to them. But it turns out that no, according to a report from El Faro, which is an El Salvadoran outlet that is critical of their president, Nayib Bukele, who is of course, an ally of President Donald Trump, turns out that no, the Trump administration is actually not going to charge MS-13 leaders with crimes. Just dropping charges. So now, wait a minute. What does this have to do with Bukele? Well, Bukele, of course, apparently had convinced Trump to drop the charges against these MS-13 leaders. Now, that's important because I remember doing a report, I think it was last week or early this week, where Bukele had actually been working and making deals with these gangs, these criminal gangs in El Salvador, telling them, "Oh no, we'll drop prosecutions, if you lower the amount of people that you murder." And so he's making deals with the crime, organizations, and now apparently Donald Trump might be doing the same thing. Oh yeah, we'll negotiate with MS-13 for and we'll drop charges against the leaders if you promise to do such and such. I mean, that's insane. And by the way, these leaders have been largely rounded up as a result of a 2019 DHS task force called Vulcan, right? And their purpose was to go in and get MS-13's leaders, right? They've been highly effective, capturing about 9 of the leaders of the gang. All El Salvadorans accused of narco-terrorism, human trafficking, and even murder committed in the United States. They had even had a plan to allegedly assassinate an FBI agent, okay, a government official. But now these same people, the administration is just quietly dropping charges against these MS-13 leaders. Interim U.S. Attorney for the Eastern District of New York, John J. Durham, had asked the Eastern District Court of New York to drop charges against 2 of the 9 leaders, Antonio Lopez Larios, the alias of Greñas, and Vladimir Antonio Arevalo Chavez, also known as Vampiro. Why? Well, they said, what? Look, we would love to charge MS-13 because they're so dangerous, but it turns out we got more important things to do. Like what? Like what? I thought that this was the most important thing. I thought that this administration was all about, we got to stop MS-13, the criminal gangs. We got to stop the Tren de Agua. We got to stop them all. There's these illegal, undocumented immigrant gangs with their violent criminals, and they're being sent over here. We got to stop them. We got to do everything we can to stop them. Oh, let's drop charges against them because we got other things to worry about now. Oh, okay. Look, this was never about stopping criminal illegals. This was all about trying to end immigration, to stop what the right wing would call the browning of America. And this is to stop the so-called Great Replacement, which is a conspiracy theory. And I've talked about plenty of times. And apparently Trump and many in his administration wholeheartedly believe in this conspiracy theory and have decided to put it into their policies. That's what ICE is doing right now. They are trying to get rid of all immigrants. And now the Supreme Court is actually helping them by basically getting rid of birthright citizenship. Because again, this was all about getting rid of immigrants in order to in the service of white supremacy. Okay. In fact, you know what? I'm gonna go to that birthright citizenship story because that is something. Sounds like a concentration camp. You absolutely right about that one. That's because that's what it is. That's what it is. All right. On Friday, the extremist right-wing Supreme Court made a ruling on birthright citizenship. Kind of. Basically, they ruled that the lower courts could not use nationwide injunctions to block potentially illegal executive orders. Now, this ties into birthright citizenship because nationwide injunctions have been used to block Trump's birthright citizenship executive order. So now the 6-3 ruling from the Heritage Foundation Court was met with, of course, fierce dissent from Justice Sonia Sotomayor, who wrote this: "No right is safe in the new legal regime the court creates. Today, the threat is to birthright citizenship. Tomorrow, a different administration may try to seize firearms from law-abiding citizens or prevent people of certain faiths from gathering to worship." And of course, that will never be Christianity. No, it will likely be Muslims. Let's be honest. Sikhs, whatever. Now, she added, with the stroke of a pen, the president has made a solemn mockery of our Constitution. The court's ruling, of course, aligns with arguments that Solicitor General John Sauer made on behalf of the Trump administration when he said that the lower courts should not have the ability to put a check, to use these injunctions, even temporarily, to put a check on Trump's executive orders. Now, remember, this aligns with Project 2025 and their effort to give even more authority to the executive branch, to essentially make Trump a dictator, a king. And that's what they're doing. The Supreme Court is helping with that by preventing the district courts from issuing their injunctions. In Friday's majority opinion, Justice Amy Coney Barrett had called out the use of these injunctions while noting that in the first 100 days of Trump's administration, there had been at least 23 universal injunctions that had been issued. Gee, I wonder why that is. Could it be because Trump keeps doing unconstitutional shit? Probably. Now, look, I know that there's apparently a debate on both sides about the use of nationwide injunctions. Certainly, I have been angry at some of the decisions that have been used, that have been handed down from some of these lower courts. Okay. Again, the Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals. I just look at the student loan, like the injunctions against student loan or student debt relief. Okay. There's that. Okay. Those were nationwide injunctions from some of the lower courts as well. And so I didn't like any of those. But it is kind of important that these district courts can put a block or a check on the executive branch to try to restrict or prevent government overreach. Unfortunately, we no longer have that. Instead, district courts are now, well, since they are no longer allowed to grant nationwide injunctions, it now falls upon the particular plaintiff in the particular area that they launched their court challenge. So that's what the Trump administration has argued, that, oh yeah, no, if you seek relief against one of my executive orders, then okay, and you win, then it should only be granted to you in that particular district. Oh, now Barrett agreed with that argument, saying that the question is not whether an injunction offers complete relief to everyone potentially affected by an allegedly unlawful act. It is whether an injunction will offer complete relief to the plaintiffs before the court. Quote, here, prohibiting enforcement of the executive order against the child of an individual pregnant plaintiff will give that plaintiff complete relief. Her child will not be denied citizenship. Extending the injunction to cover all other similarly situated individuals would not render her relief any more complete. So basically, she said that in the court had said that, individuals now have to bring their own cases before the courts and should no longer be able to rely on broad injunctive relief, even though they would have the same case as other people or the same situation. That's it. Great. Now, this means, of course, the courts are going to get a hell of a lot busier. But it's not just that. As Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson noted in her dissent, the majority opinion ignores the logistical difficulties that would come for many plaintiffs who happen to lack resources to be able to launch their own lawsuits, and of course, people who cannot access the courts. She writes this: the wealthy and well-connected will have little difficulty securing legal representation, going to court, and obtaining their own injunctive relief in their own name if the executive violates their rights. Consequently, the zone of lawlessness the majority has now authorized will disproportionately impact the poor, the uneducated, the unpopular, i.e. those who may not have the wherewithal to lawyer up, and will all too often find themselves beholden to the executive's whims. This is yet another crack in the foundation of rule of law. And that's it. There it is. Yes, helping the rich and powerful while screwing over the poor and powerless. That is exactly the result that they were looking for. This is what Vought and Project 2025 wanted, and they got it. It doesn't matter to them the court didn't touch on the merits of Trump's birthright citizenship order, because they're out there saying, well, we didn't outlaw birthright citizenship. It's just that now, if you are deported or whatever, then you're going to have to go and get your own injunctive relief. That's right. You're going to have to do it on your own. Go and get a lawyer and then sue and go to court, do all that stuff. And by the way, if you win, which you likely will, it only applies to you and not anyone else. Oh. Again, it doesn't matter to them that they didn't even discuss the court. The 14th Amendment's guarantee that anyone born on U.S. soil or within territories is entitled to citizenship at birth. Nor will it matter that they didn't acknowledge the over 100 years of precedent that upholded the interpretation of that amendment. The Trump administration structured this case in such a way as to have them avoid asking these questions. Okay? So they didn't even have to rule on the merits. All they said is, well, if you got a problem with it, you can go to court. But no more broad injunctive relief, okay? No more of that. And of course, the reason they did this is because they would lose on the merits. So instead, they did it in a way to make it more difficult for the people that are impacted by these orders to get relief when his order formally takes effect, which is about 30 days from now. So in about 30 days, things are going to get crazy. Again, since the merits of birthright citizenship itself were not decided by the court, we're going to have a lot of legal challenges. But even so, expect many children who were born here to be swiftly exiled. Not deported. You can't deport someone to a country that they don't belong to. That's exile. They are technically citizens. And again, when they go to court, they'll probably win their cases. Very, very likely they'll win their cases because birthright citizenship. But you have to get to court and adjudicate it first. So there you go. And that's it. That's it. They will now all be expected to individually challenge this in court. And so, but before that happens, very likely you're going to see a lot of them be immediately taken by ICE and disappeared before they can even get to the courts. So how can you challenge the courts? How can you how can you challenge ICE? How can you challenge deportation under this if you've already been disappeared? That's it. And that was the plan. That's how they did this. That's how this is structured. I mean, look, Ketanji Brown Jackson, I mean, she pointed it out perfectly in saying, who's got the resources for this? Yeah, well, it's certainly not the people who fled other countries to come to the U.S. for safety and then ended up having a kid here. It's not those people, but it will be those who are born to wealthy parents. Of course. Of course. Now, Trump celebrated this win on Truth Social. He said, giant win in the United States Supreme Court. Even the birthright citizenship hoax has been indirectly hit hard. Indirectly. It had to do with babies of slaves, same year, not the scamming of our immigration process. Congratulations to Attorney General Pam Bondi, Solicitor General John Sauer, and the entire DOJ. In the dissent from Sotomayor, joined by Jackson and Kagan, the justices noted that since the founding of America, children born in the U.S. are U.S. citizens. Quote, that has been the legal rule since the founding. And it was the English rule well before then. This court once attempted to repudiate it, holding in Dred Scott v. Sanford that the children of enslaved black Americans were not citizens. To remedy that grievous error, the states passed in 1866 and Congress ratified in 1868 the 14th Amendment's Citizenship Clause, which enshrined birthright citizenship in the Constitution. There it has remained, accepted and respected by Congress, by the executive, and this court until today. Yeah. What the Trump administration has done, she continued, is gamesmanship with the Constitution and the government, makes no attempt to hide it. Yet shamefully, this court plays along. And that is exactly because they were picked to do this. That's the entire reason they were picked for this. The majority on this court was handpicked by the Heritage Foundation to deliver on their agenda. And they have done so again and again and again. I mean, this court is not a legitimate court. They are activist judges. You know, the same thing that they accused the liberals on the court, when we had a liberal majority in the court, they would accuse them. Oh, activist judges. Oh, you're all activist judges. Well, what is this? They're activist judges. Now, that said, I guess now after this, we have the ability to maybe limit right-wing decisions. After all, doesn't it cut both ways? It should. It should. I mean, of course, they're going to try to argue that it doesn't, but if you have environmental regulations that were stopped by a nationwide injunction from the, I don't know, Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals, well, I guess it shouldn't apply anymore, right? I mean, except for anyone but the plaintiff in that case. Everyone else, subject to those regulations. What about religious exemptions for the rules, right? Should that no longer apply to anyone, to everyone? I guess it shouldn't. So, except for the plaintiffs. That's what the court said. So there you go. What about the state gun bans? I guess those should apply too. California, go ahead and ban guns, except for the plaintiff. They can have their guns. But no one else can, because broad injunctive relief. I'm just saying, what about student loan relief, right? Why not? Go for broke. If you're going to open the door, you might as well go through it. Might as well. We can no longer be held hostage by decisions from the insane conservative Fifth Circuit, right? Right? I'm just saying. Look, the biggest strength and the biggest weakness of this administration is their overreach. And they have been overreaching massively. And this is the newest example of how. Again, they control all the branches of Congress. Of the government. They control the Congress, they control the White House, and they control the courts. And so, of course, they're massively, massively overreaching. And yes, they are getting away with it right now. They are. But there may come a day where all of this ends up catching up to them. And suddenly, you have a situation where the shoe ends up on the other foot. And when that happens, watch out. All right. Trump would be under scrutiny with his family coming to the U.S. back in the early 1900s. Well, again, Trump has the resources to be able to go to court. And since they didn't actually rule against birthright citizenship, he has a way to squeeze himself through because he has the resources to go to court. Whereas a family from Guatemala who's escaping from poverty or war or gang violence doesn't have the resources here to challenge this in court. They and their kids are going to get deported. And that's it. That's the reality. Even though, yes, that kid is a citizen, but if you can't defend yourself in court, then what's to prevent ICE from stealing them away, the kid and the family, and sending them all back to Guatemala or to South Sudan or to El Salvador. So this is the situation that the Supreme Court has allowed to happen. Okay. You know, it doesn't feel right doing a fun story. So I will lead that to the last story, okay? To try to leave it on a lighter note, but this has been a pretty bad news day. But let's go to the Democrats. The Democratic establishment, of course. The one bright spot, though, is Mamdani. Following the electrifying win of Zoran Mamdani over the much better funded and more well-known Andrew Cuomo to become the Democratic nominee for mayor of New York City, establishment Democrats, well, first, before the election, they were warning, oh my God, socialism, right? Oh, we got socialism, and well, that would be really bad. You know, the dangers of socialism, and this guy's only 33 years old, and he's so inexperienced, and so he can't run New York City. Well, after his win, they went from that to being, oh yeah, no, we were totally thinking that you could win. Yes, we're very, very impressed. Wow, look at that. You know what? We might want to look and see what he did so we can emulate it. Oh, but wait. No. See, HuffPost is reporting that Democrats, nationally and in New York City, were almost uniformly impressed with how Assemblyman Zoran Mamdani delivered a stunning primary upset against former Governor Andrew Cuomo, zeroing in on the cost of living, creating moments that went viral, winning over young people increasingly disenchanted with the Democratic Party, and even doing surprisingly well among working-class Latino and Asian voters who had previously shifted to Donald Trump in the 2024 presidential election. And in fact, look, these same voters, by the way, had also went for Eric Adams in 2021. Going from Adams, who was a so-called moderate centrist, to a democratic socialist like Mamdani, they're looking at that and saying, whoa, what is going on here? How did that happen? Instead of going for Cuomo. What? Now, here's an example of the response here from House Democratic leader Hakeem Jeffries, for example, who posted this on social media. Quote, Assemblyman Mamdani ran a strong campaign that relentlessly focused on the economy and bringing down the high cost of living in New York City. So that is objectively true. That is exactly what he did. Now, I know Hakeem Jeffries, not personally, but I know that he is not exactly a fan of the left. And so he does not often praise the left. In fact, Hakeem Jeffries, more often than not, has gone out of his way to show that he despises the left, specifically our policies. So what happened? Does this mean Hakeem Jeffries has changed his mind? No. Oh, no. No. Of course not. You think Hakeem Jeffries suddenly is being like, you know what? I am a democratic socialist now. No. So what they're doing, though, the establishment knows that they're deeply unpopular. 27% approval rating. Okay. But what they're doing right now is asking the question, okay. So Mamdani won. How do we win? Okay, well, that's pretty simple, right? How do we win? Well, you do what Mamdani did. You run unpopular economic policy. Yes, okay, sure, the establishment says. But how do we win without actually doing that? How do we win like Mamdani did without actually taking any of Mamdani's policy positions? Oh, I see. So you want to win like a democratic socialist without actually doing any democratic socialism. Got it. Okay. Now, what do I mean by his policies? Well, again, he supported a year-long freeze on the rents for tenants in rent-stabilized apartments. He supports a $30 minimum wage. He wants free public transportation, bus fare. He wants to create city-owned grocery stores for low-income people so that they could, avoid inflation. These are all good policies. Now, he had also previously supported defunding the police. And he, unlike many establishment Democrats, has also been willing to criticize Israel, okay, their war on Gaza, and call it out like it is. It is a genocide. So now, Democratic establishment, they're asking the question of how do we win? And, well, their answer is, I don't know, fake it, I guess, pretty much. In fact, look, here is, God, I don't have where I got the quote from. Sorry about that. But this is an establishment Democrat saying he did not win because he is a democratic socialist. What? I would have talked about many of those things, like free transportation, universal child care. These are things that can certainly unite the National Party. Okay, then why not do that? Well, because you don't actually mean it. And by the way, if you already knew beforehand that these kinds of policies would help you win, then why didn't you do that before? You had a chance in the 2024 election. Why, instead of dealing with, talking about inflation and how you're going to reduce inflation and how you're going to, help people afford homes. Okay. And by the way, Mamdani's like, yes, I want to freeze the rents, but I also want to build more affordable housing. Okay. Why didn't you talk about that? Why did you instead trot out Liz Cheney at every single opportunity while bragging about how our military is the most lethal military in the world? Oh, we're going to be so tough on immigrants. Let me tell you what, we're going to be super tough on immigrants. How come you did that instead of centering your campaign on, hey, we know prices are really, really high. We're going to do something about it. We're going to lower the prices. We're going to give you health care. We're going to give you universal child care. And I'm not saying that the Harris campaign didn't have some of those policies, which would be good in their policy positions, right? But what I'm saying here is Harris did not focus on that. The Harris campaign didn't talk about those things because they wanted to get the billionaires on board. And not only did they want to get the billionaires on board, but they also wanted to get Republicans on board, the anti-Trumpers, right? The so-called anti-Trump Republican vote on board. So of course they couldn't talk about like, oh no, we're gonna, yes, sure, we're gonna do things that are gonna make we're gonna raise the minimum wage, raise it to like $25 an hour. They didn't even do that. Okay. Instead, they talked about freedom and democracy and Liz Cheney. And, oh, by the way, I've got a gun. That's what Harris is like, oh, yeah, I got my Glock. What are you doing? Okay. None of that worked. Obviously, she lost. But the irony here, though, is, okay, yes, Mamdani's campaign was about, it's the economy. Now, Harris was not allowed to challenge Biden's record on inflation. Wasn't able to do that. Wasn't able to really distinguish herself from the Biden administration. In fact, they said, no, you can't do that. You will make Joe Biden look bad. Oh, and so she didn't. She was not able to focus on, yes, where the Biden administration fell short on economic issues, on inflation, right? But unlike that campaign, or unlike Bill Clinton, who, by the way, had endorsed Cuomo, Mamdani focused on, let's talk about income inequality. Let's do something about that. Let's make things more affordable for average working people. In fact, here's what he said. Ultimately, this is a campaign about inequality. And you don't have to live in the most expensive city in the country to have experienced that inequality, because it's a national issue. And what Americans coast to coast are looking for are people who will fight for them, not just believe in the things that resonate with their lives, but actually fight and deliver on those very things. I think that in focusing on working people and their struggles, we also return back to what makes so many of us proud to be Democrats in the first place. And there you go. Now, his campaign strategist said it a little bit more distinctly. He said it's pretty effing simple. Take on the billionaires who are destroying the economy. Fight for working people, said a senior strategist to Mamdani's campaign. Zoran is a generational talent, and that can't be replicated. But what can be is a politics of courage and authenticity. So look, understand, like, yes, Mamdani is electrifying. He is very, very well spoken. He's energetic, and yeah, all that stuff is important. But what's more important too is the message. The message, and his message is, we're going to take on income inequality, and we're going to make things more affordable. Easy. Now, that said, the establishment, getting back to the original premise here, because the establishment is trying to figure out how do we emulate that? How do we replicate that win across the country? You're not going to. For one, you're not authentic. You're not authentic. Secondly, okay, the establishment serves the donor class, which, I don't know if you've been paying attention, is pretty at odds with the will of the voters. That's the reality. And finally, the policies are the main reason that people supported Mamdani. It turns out you can't run a populist campaign if you do not actually support populist policy. If you try it, you're going to lose. People are going to see absolutely right through you. And so I think ultimately the establishment is going to fail at this because they're missing the most important point. And that is the policies. They matter. The rate of inflation matters. Biden brought that down massively and was still trending downward when he left office. Compared that to now. There's no doubt that, yes, inflation, the rate of inflation slowed down during the Biden administration. I'm not arguing against that, okay? But the rate of inflation still was higher, that erased any of the gains that the workers had made in, for example, rising pay, okay? That rate of inflation kind of wiped out those gains, and people were still feeling behind. That's one of the problems, right? Now, I'm not saying that the problem has been fixed. Trump made it worse, okay? Yes, Trump has increased the rate of inflation, and, people are still not getting paid more. And so that is one of the big problems here, because Trump has no idea what he's doing. But to say that, well, look, the rate of inflation did go down a little bit, during the Biden administration is not exactly the greatest defense of the Biden administration and their stewardship of the economy. And again, it's not all on Joe Biden. Of course, I'm not blaming him for that, for all of it. I'm just saying that right now, what you didn't have is one of the things that would actually make it so that the rate of inflation, that people would feel like they're ahead, as opposed to the rate of inflation, which is, of course, to raise wages. We didn't have a massive increase in wages, especially people that are still making the minimum wage. And so, yes, you have Americans that just didn't feel like they were getting ahead at all. And that's one of the big problems here. Okay. No, you didn't miss big balls. In fact, I'm going to get to that right now as the last story. Oh boy. It appears that I may have spoken too soon. Turns out that Big Balls is hanging in there after all.
Testicles.
According to a recent report in Wired, Edward Korestein, the 19-year-old Doge blunderkin known as Big Balls, hasn't actually quit government after all. No. Contrary to previous reports, he has apparently taken a new position in the SSA 2 days after leaving the Department of Government Efficiency, the non-Department of Government Efficiency, by the way. Korestein joined the Social Security Administration this week as a special government employee, you know, kind of like what Elon Musk had been doing so before his falling out with Trump. This is according to Stephen McGraw, an SSA spokesperson. His work will be focused on improving the functionality of the SSA website and advancing our mission of delivering more efficient service to the American people. Korestein was one of the first and youngest employees at Doge, where he worked across a range of government agencies such as the Office of Management and Personnel, Health and Human Services, and the U.S. Agency for International Development. What he did there, I don't really know. I don't think anybody did, and that's kind of a problem. We don't know what he did, what he had access to, and what information he took with him when he left. But apparently now he's back, probably maybe to get more. I don't know. Multiple sources at the SSA tell Wired that Korestein has appeared in person to work on site at the agency's Woodlawn, Maryland headquarters. One SSA employee says that they saw Korestein with Doge engineer Aram Mogadesi and a current ex and former Neuralink employee deployed at the agency. The pair was spotted, get it, at the SSA cafeteria as recently as Monday, although it's unclear what day this week Korestein's employment officially began. The SSA source told Wired, quote, "He looked nervous, almost embarrassed. Aram was on the phone with someone, then said, 'Yes, I'm with him right now,' gesturing to the young man." Wait, hold on. Wait. So the guy, Big Balls, right? Apparently embarrassed when somebody pointed him out. Yeah, oh no, I'm with this guy. He's like a celebrity now. Okay. All right. Sure.
Testicles.
There it is. Big Balls. Apparently back and getting his second swing at working for the government. Yeah. Government career. It's going to look great on a resume, I guess. But to be fair, he is a special government employee. He's got about 130 days, and then he'll be out again, I guess. But I don't know. Look, I think personally, on a more serious level, I think there's cause for concern here. Again, he's a Musk guy. He is only 19, and they're having him work on the Social Security website. That's I don't know. I'm a little concerned. I don't trust any of the Doge goons with our personal data, and they had unprecedented access to it, and that is again very, very concerning. Very, very concerning. But not only that, though, it's kind of weird to see him get rehired just a couple of days after he was, he stopped working at the other parts of the government. So I don't know. It's weird. Richard Pierce, a law professor at George Washington University, tells Wired that the White House not knowing that a recently departed employee had been rehired was abnormal, but it seems to be normal for this administration. Yeah, well, look, there is no normal for this administration. Okay, There is no more normal. Normal has been obliterated. Okay. There is no new low that this administration will not drag themselves across. In their apparent stated goal, well, not stated goal, but apparent goal of essentially teabagging the Constitution. Because apparently this is just the newest example of that.
Testicles.
SSA system is written in COBOL, which Big Balls has no experience with. That's because it's an older programming language. But yes, absolutely. You are 100% right about that one. And he was fired from a previous job for corporate espionage. Exactly. Exactly. And there you go. All right. That's it. That's all I got for you today. Thank you for watching the show. Please like and share the stream if you haven't already. Also, consider becoming a member by hitting the join button below. Also, consider becoming a patron, patreon.com/jeffwaldorf. Whichever you want to do, help out independent progressive media. All right, so that said, everybody have a good weekend. I'll be back on Monday, another show. So, you know, tune in for that, 2 p.m. Eastern, right here. And as far as everything else goes, yikes. Just, yeah. Yikes. Anyway, love you all. Try to have a good weekend, and we'll see you back here on Monday. And remember, change begins with you. Good night.